Must be a son for the Millers, my mother-in-law hissed at the nursery. My husband agreed and opened the window. My twins fell into the storm. Now, they're back to testify. The harsh rays of the sun, typical of early summer, poured through the window of a real estate office in Greenville, Texas. Even though the outdoor temperature was well over 95 degrees by then, it being after 3 p.m., Green Valley Real Estate's inside environment was nice and cool. The air conditioning's soft drone offered a pleasant break from the usual southern stickiness. Linda Matthews, a woman of 35 years, sat at my desk looking over paperwork for a new property listing. I had one hand resting on my growing tummy while scrolling through the computer screen. My body, now housing twins, was covered by a flowing white dress. On my desk, I had a glass of iced tea with mint leaves and an appointment card reminding me of my prenatal checkup next week. Oh, I gave a tiny gasp as I felt a sudden movement from inside. Turning my gaze away from the screen, I delicately put my hand on my belly. Again, are you moving? I smiled gently, paying attention to the Bobby's activity. These little ones were my dream come true after 2 years of undergoing fertility treatments. The office was filled with the quiet sounds of phones ringing and the tap of keyboards. I recalled when I first arrived in this town straight after getting my degree from the University of Dallas 5 years prior. I started as a real estate agent, with nothing to my name, and had now become a knowledgeable professional earning $50,000 annually. My clients had such faith in me, so they continued to give me important cases even during my pregnancy. Linda, would you please make a duplicate of this paper? Sarah, her coworker, called out from across the room. Certainly, I will. When I went to stand, I realized I was a little winded. I could really sense the extra pounds in my midsection accumulating with each passing day. Looking back 3 years, when I became Mrs. James Miller, who worked as an executive at the local Miller Construction Company, I never pictured life going this way. That initial year of fertility treatments was a constant stream of worry about the test results each month. Right when I was ready to throw in the towel during that second year, I got the incredible news that I was pregnant. After that, the doctor shared the wonderful news at my initial ultrasound. Congratulations, you're having twins. Our single-family house located in a calm, residential area, and our serene Sunday brunches after church at First Baptist Church of Greenville, everything had seemed to be going just perfectly. But lately, a few cracks had started to appear in this idyllic picture. James, though originally stunned and pleased when we announced the pregnancy, seemed to be getting more and more uneasy. He'd been putting in overtime on weekends, constantly occupied with his phone when he was home, and falling into an odd silence as though something was bothering him. Every time I brought up the topic of his past or his family, he would immediately shift the conversation. My mother-in-law, Martha, had also started to act differently. Even though she was well regarded in our community for her church-based charity work, lately she had become overly concerned with Miller family customs and how crucial it was to have an heir. I was so anxious to find out if the twins were going to be boys. I kept saying, I really want boys. It felt like next week's appointment would finally tell me if I'd have sons. A mixture of hope and worry churned within me. It truly shouldn't make a difference if I had boys or girls. The most important thing was that they were healthy. But somehow my mother-in-law's remarks kept playing over and over in my head. The cicadas outside were getting louder. Far off ominous, dark clouds were beginning to blanket the sky, likely signaling the kind of afternoon storm that always arrives in Texas during the summer. I took a deep breath and focused back on the papers. Even though the sun was shining, I couldn't shake the feeling that a dark presence was closing in, slowly stealing away my serenity. Even so, the twins' lively kicks inside me gave me strength. Everything will be okay, I murmured quietly. I'll make sure my children are happy. I took the latest ultrasound photo out of my desk. The black and white picture showed 2 small beings cuddling up close. My heart overflowed with affection for these bobbies I hadn't even met. I glanced upward at the sky. The dark clouds were quickly moving outward. Anyone could see the rain was about to begin. The car I was driving entered the Greenville General Hospital parking area as the morning mist was still hanging around. It was 7:00 in the morning, and my contractions had begun the night before, with 3 days to go before I was due to give birth. The colossal hospital structure sparkled under the morning sunlight's glare, which hit its glass panes. Easy now, this is quite a lot. The colossal hospital building gleamed in the early sunlight that hit its glass. No need to hurry. Martha, my mother-in-law, helped me step out of the car on the passenger side. Martha, with a white cardigan on, held tightly to the prepared hospital bag. James, my husband, had already gone to his job, claiming he had a crucial meeting. His words over the phone sounded a little strange, like something was after him. "I'll be there right when the meeting ends." His tone felt detached and not its normal, friendly self. A sense of calm filled the hospital lobby in the early hours of the day. A gentle glow from the entryway ceiling bounced off the white floors. After I finished the check-in at the front desk, I started toward the third floor where the delivery room was. On the elevator ride up, I softly put my hand on my large belly. The hallway with its all-white theme had a smell of cleaning fluid. Doctors, done with their early rounds, rushed by carrying files. "Good morning, Mrs. Matthews." Dr. Thompson, my doctor, came into view carrying my file. The nice-looking, middle-aged woman had been taking care of my pregnancy since the start. "How far apart are the contractions?" "About 15 minutes. "That's moving along well. It looks like we'll see your bobbies today." I got taken to my room and lay on the bed. I could see trees in the park behind the hospital from the window. The summer foliage outside danced gently in the wind. Martha brought a little cross and it hung in the corner over there. "Let's say our prayers," I thought. "Martha, Martha, please pray." I sat in a chair, closing my eyes softly. A tiny bit of tightness showed on my face. As time went on, the contractions came at shorter intervals. The sky outside the window started to get cloudy, slowly but surely. The news had warned us about possible thunderstorms later tonight. It was just past midday when James finally showed up. He was wearing his suit and came in hesitantly, completely unlike his usual confident self. The meeting took longer than expected. He started to offer some explanations but fell silent, looking apologetic when he saw how much Linda was hurting. His gaze seemed far away, like he wasn't really present in the moment. "James, let's pray," Martha said, encouraging her son. They stood together in the corner of the room, whispering something under their breath. Seeing them, I felt a rush of worry, but another contraction quickly made me forget about it. By around 3 in the afternoon, the labor had really picked up. While the nurses went in and out, Martha continued to pray silently in the corner. Even though she seemed very religious, there was something else, something I couldn't quite name, in the way she occasionally looked at me. The clouds outside were even darker now. The sound of the rain hitting the window grew louder and louder. "It's almost time," Martha whispered, holding my hand. Her voice showed a mixture of anticipation and worry. My hand felt a little clammy. Things started to speed up as evening drew near. "Okay, Mrs. Matthews, we need to get you to the delivery room." Dr. Thompson's words instantly thickened the air with anxiety. I gazed up at the overhead fluorescent lights as the bed was wheeled down the hall. The succession of lights whizzing past felt like significant markers in my existence. The delivery room doors swung open, and the medical team quickly got everything ready. Nurses efficiently hooked up all sorts of machines as they moved me to the delivery table. The clock on the wall read 6 p.m. outside the window. The sky was totally obscured by dark clouds. Every so often, I heard distant thunder. "Almost there." The doctor's voice boomed again. "I can see the baby's head." James and Martha, my husband and mother-in-law, observed everything with intense focus from the room's edge. Their faces revealed something more akin to dread instead of hope. When the first baby arrived, a soft cry echoed throughout the room. "It's a girl." The instant the nurse announced this, I heard my husband and my mother-in-law both gasp quietly. Their response suggested something completely different from happiness. Just a little more for the second one. The second baby arrived safely only 2 minutes later. "This one's a girl, too." I gave a worn smile amidst all the congratulations. Strangely, my husband and mother-in-law had stiff, unchanging expressions. They exchanged glances as if they'd reached some sort of agreement. "Twin girls, how wonderful." My ears caught the emptiness in Martha's tone. Even though her eyes were fixed on the infants, it seemed like she was gazing off into the distance. James just took a quick look at the newborns before instantly reaching for his phone. It looked like he was texting somebody. When I got back to my room, I instantly fell into a deep sleep, completely drained from giving birth. The newborns were brought up to the nursery on the 5th floor so they could get the care they needed. It was 11:30 p.m., and the hospital hallways were only partially lit by the lights used for the night shift. Outside, the thunderstorm was getting stronger, with intermittent flashes of lightning that gave off a bright blue-white light that shone through the windows. The noise of the pouring rain hitting the windows echoed throughout the hallways. A pair of shadows moved cautiously along the hallway in front of the 5th-floor nursery. It was James and Martha. Their faces didn't show any kind of uncertainty anymore. "There's no one here," Martha stated as she looked around. The night nurse was occupied dealing with critical cases on another floor. The thunderstorm had brought in a lot of emergencies. The nursery door made a gentle sound as it opened. Inside, scores of newborns were sleeping in their cribs. The sleeping bobbies were gently illuminated by a soft blue light. The two of them made their way towards the twins who were placed at the very end. "These children," Martha's voice shook. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they were not tears of love. "Children who can't continue the Miller legacy. James picked up the first baby. His hands moved with purpose as he approached the window. The window glass was pounded fiercely by heavy rain, accompanied by loud thunder. I really wanted a son. The moment the window opened, I saw lightning. That little form was hurled into the blackness. Rain's noise muffled what could have been a whimper. No, a horrified shriek sounded from the corridor. The night nurse was back, having dealt with the other situation. But it was already too late. The other infant, held by Martha, was also lost in the dark. With another flash of light, a small, white package ripped through the sheets of rain as it dropped. Stop. The nurse's cry was lost in the thunder. The emergency alarm blared, throwing the hospital into pandemonium. I heard the sound of hurried steps in the halls and empty spaces and people shouting. At that moment, Linda was sleeping in her room on the third floor, completely unaware. On her pillow, the first and only photo with the twins was lit up by the lightning. In the picture, the newborn twins had their eyes shut, almost as if they sensed something. The rain before dawn had quietly changed to fog. As a dim light started to appear in the back garden of Greenville General Hospital, Mike Johnson, the security guard, was doing his normal patrol. What was that? He saw something white like material in the shrubs. Getting closer, he found that it was a hospital swaddling cloth, and from inside I could hear soft crying. "Hey, somebody!" Mike's yell shattered the quiet. Suddenly, the hospital's back garden was full of action. The twin bobbies were found in the bushes, amazingly alive. The dense hedges had softened the impact of their fall, and the delicate branches and foliage had supported the infants. The rescue squad arrived quickly, and they started crucial medical interventions right away. The specialized nurses and doctors in the neonatal unit were prepared, with incubators at the ready. The whole hospital was filled with an overwhelming sense of urgency and worry. I was sleeping in my private room on the third floor, and a nurse's gentle voice woke me. "Mrs. Matthews," she said. I could tell something awful was happening from the nurse's face, so I immediately sat up in bed. 2 police officers were in the room. The male officer in his Texas State Police uniform quietly took off his hat. "An incident took place in the nursery last night," he said. When I heard those words, everything just went black. Screams filled the room as nurses poured in. Several people desperately held me back because I almost tore out my IV. "Please calm down," someone said. "The bobbies are alive." The officer's words finally penetrated my panic. They made it. "They're getting immediate care right now." My body went completely weak. I started crying uncontrollably. "My husband, where is he?" I asked. The officers looked at each other. Then in hushed tones, they began describing what happened that night. The security cameras had captured everything. 2 figures had snuck into the nursery. The bobbies had been thrown out the window. And my husband and mother-in-law had tried to get away. "Mr. James Miller and Mrs. Martha Miller have already been taken into custody," they told me. It feels like those words originated from a distant place. Past happenings flashed before me like images from an old movie reel. My husband's shift in behavior, my mother-in-law's controlling actions, and that phone call from that day. When the sun started to come up, journalists started arriving at the hospital. News of a construction company executive trying to kill newborns spread quickly all around Texas. The investigation moved quickly. Law enforcement searched James and Martha's residence, and awful revelations came to light, one after the other. In James's office, they discovered an old wedding photograph featuring a woman I didn't recognize. Mary Sutton had been James' first spouse. We were wed until 2018. Mary offered to speak to the police of her own accord. Although her voice wavered, her resolve was quite evident. I also gave birth to a daughter. And then, her words during testimony were unbelievable. Without warning, she received divorce papers after she had just given birth. Martha was behind it all. She kept declaring that the Miller family required a male heir. It sounded like a sort of curse. Martha Miller's character took center stage in the investigation. Behind her seemingly friendly persona as a volunteer at First Baptist Church of Greenville lay a mother fixated on the family's ancestry and who dominated her son entirely. The continuation of the Miller family line had to happen through a son. Those words appeared multiple times in Martha's diary. From the time they were married, she had controlled everything about James's existence. His prior marriage and even his divorce, all according to what she wanted. Lots of detectives kept coming and going from my hospital room. My hands shook as I verified each statement. My husband's unknown fate was determined. Everything began to make sense, including my mother-in-law's confusing actions and the terrible things that happened during that storm. Things slowly started to come together for me. The twins were getting better in the NICU. It was amazing. They didn't have any major issues and weren't in any immediate danger. Those bobbies were tough. The doctor taking care of them talked to me in a soft voice. They must have felt my love for them. The rain had stopped, and the sky was clear outside. The bushes in the garden behind the hospital were sparkling with water droplets. Those leaves and branches had safeguarded those precious little lives the night before. The media continued to report the story every day. What happened in that tiny Texas town was shocking everyone across the country. I received so many supportive messages online, and the hospital was flooded with letters of encouragement. After a week passed, the Greenville police said they were charging James and Martha. They were accused of trying to kill someone and harming children. I sat in the NICU watching over the incubators every day. I could see the little lives inside through the glass. Whenever the twins' eyes opened, I could see that they were already incredibly lively. I whispered to the Bobbies, "Mama will always protect you." Outside the window, dawn's fresh light began to wash over Greenville. Winter sunshine poured into the Hunt County courthouse. Half a year had slipped by since everything happened, and the trees were showing their fall colors. This was the day for the final statements and the judge's decision. The courtroom was packed since the early hours of the day, with a tense feeling thick in the space. I was called up as a witness. Donning a dark suit, I sat up very straight, staring forward. Local reporters and people who backed me filled the seats. Members of the First Baptist Church of Greenville were also there. "Could you describe that day for us?" The prosecutor's words barely registered. I inhaled deeply and slowly started to describe the fertility treatments, the long-awaited pregnancy, and the terrible events of that rainy night. Even though my voice shook sometimes, it never broke completely. I had hoped that we would become a family, but that night my voice cracked. The courtroom went utterly silent. My husband and my mother-in-law watched my newborn Bobbies from the window. I began to tremble slightly on the witness stand. James and Martha, the defendants, had their heads bowed, unmoving. Their once-proud looks were gone, with deep exhaustion carved into their faces. You thought this was okay for a Miller family legacy. When the prosecutor asked, Martha finally looked up. "I just wanted to uphold the family name." My mother's words used to hold more weight. The Miller family legacy has always been inherited by the male offspring, stretching back to when my dad was in charge, even my grandpa's time. I thought it was an unbreakable rule. "Did you really try to end the lives of those harmless infants?" The prosecutor's tone was loud and clear. Tears started streaming down Martha's face. "Finally, I made a mistake. A massive mistake. Linda, please, can you forgive the Bobbies?" Her words were cut short by heavy crying. James also rose to his feet. His face revealed feelings I had never witnessed before. Mom has always dictated every single aspect of my life. The first wedding, the separation, the ending of the marriage, it was all according to her wishes. He continued speaking, his voice shaking. "But that doesn't justify anything. As a dad, I committed the most awful thing imaginable." His voice choked, and he lowered his head in shame. The evidence given by Mary Sutton stunned the room. Martha said I was a disappointment for not producing a son. What she said made everyone in the room react. She told me this repeatedly. "The Millers need a boy, you're useless." Mary's words quivered. Then I was forced to get a divorce. James just did whatever his mom wanted him to do. During the closing argument, Martha's lawyer discussed typical Southern family traditions and pressure from society. But those statements failed to lighten the heavy mood in the room. When the sentence was to be read, the courtroom was thick with worry. The judge started to state the decision, his face serious. I pronounced James Miller and Martha Miller guilty, handing down a sentence of 15 years in prison for each of them for the crime of attempted murder. The sound of the gavel crashing down signaled the end of the case. I then gazed up at the sky and let out a long breath. The azure sky I could see through the courthouse window felt like a sign of a fresh beginning, clean and full of hope. Half a year passed, and I relocated to Dallas with my twin daughters, Emma and Sophia. I sold the home in Greenville and began my new chapter in a city apartment. At times, the energy of the city helped soothe my emotional scars. "Mom, look," I heard. My 2-year-old twins are now playfully chasing each other in the park. Every time they fall, they just get back up and go again. Their ability to bounce back gives me inner fortitude. From time to time, I receive letters from the prison filled with apologies from James and Martha. When I read those letters, they bring up a mix of emotions. While I'm not able to forgive them at this moment, I refuse to let hatred hold me captive. I tell myself I've chosen to keep moving forward. I got back into the real estate business. My new office in Dallas was tiny, but I loved the freedom of working independently. I also established New Dawn, an organization designed to help mothers who find themselves in analogous circumstances. At our weekly meetings held on Saturdays, a variety of women meet to discuss their individual stories. I listen attentively to the voices of those who are struggling with expectations and bias. How many women have been crushed under the pressure of what is called tradition? I spoke to the group one day, adding, "But we all have the power to choose. I have the right to build my own family brick by brick." At church, she joins in the hymns alongside the twins. That old hurt still surfaces from time to time, but every time I conquer it, I become a little bit tougher. "We were given hardships by God." Linda quietly nods along with the priest's sermon. However, he also provided us the fortitude to prevail. I'm in my office, looking out at the Dallas skyline, checking the paperwork for some new real estate. There's a picture of the twins on my desk. Their laughing faces as they play signify a joyful future. In a note from Mary she penned, "Your smiles will definitely give someone else a reason to hope." The strong Texas sun beams through the window, indicating that the new season is almost here, and in her heart there is no doubt left. It's the road she chose, it's the road she took. This is the path she is destined to continue on. Our tale starts at this moment. Linda spoke softly as she grabbed her pen. I put my signature on the fresh contract with confident strokes. It was imprinted on the paper like a promise to the future, resolute and certain. That evening, while tucking the twins in for the night, Linda said a quiet prayer, not for spite but for a sense of optimism, not for the ways things always were. Instead, I was praying for love, and I want all the mothers to be happy as their lives move forward.